Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a concept that's so big, it basically underpins everything in human society. We're talking about our laws, our economies, and yeah, even our most personal dreams. It's an idea called imagined orders, and trust me, it might just change how you see, well, everything. All right, let's just jump right in with a pretty bold question. We always think of the move to farming as humanity's great leap forward, right? But what if it wasn't? What if that whole revolution was actually a trap? You know, before we started farming, life was surprisingly different. Our ancestors had these incredibly varied diets, way more free time, and their home was this huge territory of forests and rivers. But the farmer's world? It got so much smaller and so much harder. All of a sudden, your whole life is tied to this tiny plot of land, you're working sun up to sundown, and you're constantly worried about whether the crops will fail. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with that agricultural trap, which leads to this huge mystery about cooperation. Then we'll uncover the wild solution our ancestors came up with, an invisible architecture of stories that, believe it or not, still runs our world today. So what exactly was this trap? I mean, if farming made life worse for the average person, why on earth did we stick with it? Well, the answer isn't about the quality of life, it's about the quantity of life. Farming allowed for one thing on a massive scale, a population boom. And just look at the numbers here, it's absolutely wild. We went from a global population of maybe 8 million hunter-gatherers to 250 million people in the new agricultural world. And every single one of those new lives was totally dependent on farming. There was simply no going back. The trap had snapped shut. Now, this massive population explosion created a huge new problem. Suddenly, you have crowded cities and these giant empires. But our brains, right, they're wired to cooperate in small bands of maybe a few dozen people that we know and trust. So how in the world did millions of strangers build societies together without it all just falling into chaos? You might think, well, they just had more food. But history shows us again and again that's not it. So many of history's biggest collapses didn't happen because of famine. They happened when societies were at their wealthiest. The real problem wasn't a lack of stuff, it was a total breakdown of social order. This timeline just lays the problem bare. We went from cooperating in villages of a few hundred people to empires of 100 million, in what is, from an evolutionary perspective, the blink of an eye. Our instincts just weren't built for this. So, how did we pull it off? Well, the answer, and this is pretty amazing, lies in what you could call humanity's greatest superpower: our ability to create and believe in stories. And here it is, the solution to the puzzle. We cooperate on a massive scale because of these imagined orders. Now, these aren't objective things. They're not like gravity or trees. They are powerful, shared fictions about things like gods, nations, money, human rights, ideas that only exist in our collective imagination. This imagined glue is really what holds our whole world together. It's the secret sauce that lets millions of strangers trust each other, pay taxes, follow laws, and build everything from the ancient pyramids to modern-day corporations. Okay, to make this idea really concrete, let's look at two of the most influential imagined orders in all of history. They were written over 3,500 years apart, but they were both trying to do the exact same thing: create a blueprint for how millions of people could live together. Now, on the surface, these two documents could not be more different. One is from ancient Babylon, and it's all about a rigid hierarchy. The other, from the American founders, is all about the idea of radical equality. So, Hammurabi's code, it laid out a divinely ordered social pyramid. You had superiors, commoners, and slaves. And your actual worth and the punishment for hurting you literally depended on what class you were born into and your gender. Justice wasn't blind at all. It was built on hierarchy. Okay, now let's fast forward about 3,500 years. The Declaration of Independence states the total opposite. But get this, it justifies it in almost the same way, not with biology, but with a divine creator who says it so. The story here is that all humans are fundamentally equal and have these inherent rights. When you put them side by side, the contradiction is just glaring. One society says hierarchy is justice, the other says equality is justice. So that brings us to the really crucial question. According to objective reality, which one is right? And here's the kicker, the really shocking answer. Neither of them.
From a purely biological point of view, there's no such thing as equality or rights or a divinely ordered class system. They are both incredibly powerful, world-changing fictions. They're just imagined orders. So, if these fundamental ideas that run our lives are just stories, why do they feel so unbelievably real? Why don't we just see them for what they are?
Well, there are three big reasons. First, these stories get physically built into the world all around us. Second, they actually burrow into our minds and shape what we want out of life. And third, they don't just exist in your head or my head, they exist in the shared imagination of millions.
Let's think about that second point, desire. Why do so many of us dream of taking a vacation to, say, Paris? It is not a natural human instinct. A chimpanzee doesn't want to go on holiday. An ancient pharaoh would have used his money to build a giant tomb, not to go sightseeing. That dream of a romantic trip is a story, a powerful one, sold to us by the modern imagined orders of romanticism and consumerism. And that leads to the third reason. You can't just wake up one morning and decide you don't believe in money anymore. Concepts like laws and nations and money are intersubjective. They exist in this shared network of belief. For something like the US dollar to become worthless, pretty much everyone has to stop believing in it at the same time. And this all brings us to one last really profound, and maybe even a little bit unsettling thought about human society and what it means to be free. See, this means there's no real escape from the system. You can't just reject it and decide to live in objective reality. To tear down the walls of one imagined order, you first have to get millions and millions of people to believe in a new, and usually even more powerful, story. So we're left with this final, powerful idea. Are we ever really, truly free? Or every time we think we break free, are we just moving from one imagined prison into another, maybe slightly bigger, more comfortable one? It's a question that really gets to the heart of what it means to be human in this world we've all built together.